Mr. Kazuhiko Futagawa. He was exposed to the A-bomb explosion in the womb when his mother was 2 months pregnant with him. His father and eldest sister died due to the atomic bombing. During her entire life, his mother never talked about his father, his sister, or the atomic bombing. After her death, he found that his mother had carefully kept his sister's uniform to remember her by. Today, he shares his family's A-bomb experience in English.
Hello everyone, my name is Kazuhiko Futagawa. I was born on April 1st, 1946, 8 months after the A-bombing. My mother was pregnant with me when the A-bomb was dropped. I'm one of the youngest hibakusha known as an in utero hibakusha. Hibakusha means A-bomb survivors, of which there are 7,155 in utero hibakusha as of this year, 2017. Today, I'll be presenting you my testimony of what happened to my family on the day of the A-bombing and our lives after that. My father and eldest sister died in the A-bombing. But my mother had never told me about the A-bombing, my father, eldest sister, or anything while she was alive. So I don't know anything about those days as I was grown up. Therefore, my story is based on I heard from my aunt and cousin and relatives. My family house was about 3.7 kilometers away from the hypocenter, east of Hiroshima Station, when the A-bomb was dropped. The house was almost collapsed by the blast, the doors blown away, glass was shattered, and so on. However, the house escaped the fire. At that time, my mother and her brother and sister happened to be visiting our next-door neighbor in the throat-touched house. The neighbor in the throat-touched house protected them from the blast, so they were safe. Now, I'm going to tell you about my father. Before the A-bomb, my father had worked at the post office as a postmaster. We are now standing in this Peace Memorial Park. Until the A-bomb was dropped, this part of the city was the busy downtown hub of Hiroshima. There were lots of buildings here, stores, temples, theaters, and restaurants, and the people living here enjoy a happy, peaceful existence. It's estimated that there are around 6,500 residents in this neighborhood. His post office was located right here in this area, over there in front of Senator. It was about 300 meters from the hypocenter. On the morning of August 6, my father had gone to the post office by train and streetcar as usual. He must have been just started working when the A-bomb was dropped at 8:15 in the morning. He must have been killed by the blast and heat rays instantly. He was only 47 years old. Perhaps my father's ashes are buried around here underneath in where I'm standing. At the moment the A bomb exploded, the temperature at ground level reached between here 3,400 to 4,000 degrees centigrade. Steel melt nearly 1,500 degrees centigrade. So the heat generated here on that day must have been beyond anything we could imagine. Next, I want to talk about my eldest sister. She died also in the atomic bombing at that day. She was only 13 years old, her first student of junior high school. In those days, almost all adult men had been called up to fight. So school children were forced to work to make up for wartime labor shortage. Boys and girls, the aged between 12 and 17, were required to work. The 12 and 13 years old had to undertake building demolition and farm work. The older children were forcibly employed in munition factories. Toward the end of the war, many of Japan's cities were subjected to widespread incendiary bombing almost every day. On that terrible day in Hiroshima, 8,400 students were working on building demolition to create fire breaks in order to prevent fire from spreading and evacuation route. My sister was working about 1 kilometer south of the hypocenter. Nearly 6,300 of them were killed by the A-bomb. Perhaps my sister was one of them. My father and elder sister were either terribly burned by heat rays and crying out water just before they died, or they jumped into the river. I'm not sure, but I think their ashes are contained in this memorial mound. Let me tell you about my mother. This is my mother. On August 6th, the central area of the city was completely destroyed by the A-bomb. And the city was on fire. Nobody was able to enter the city. The next day, on August 7th, my mother rushed to the area near the hypocenter where my father's post office was and where my sister was in the working area. She desperately searched for them along river banks, wandering through the city every day, day by day. I was 2-month-old unborn baby in my mother's womb. She was 2 months pregnant with me at that time. Finally, she went to Nimoshima Island, where there was temporary army shelter and a quarantine station. Nimoshima Island is near Hiroshima port. About 10,000 A-bomb victims had been carried there. There was no treatment and no medical supplies. The victims just lay down on the floor, and most of them died in a few days. My mother looked for my father and sister until the end of August. However, my mother couldn't find them. My father and sister's bodies have never been found. After the war, my mother started working my aunt's post office. She really worked hard every day for more than 30 years. When And then, when I was 5 or 6 years old, my mother got sick and went to the hospital. She had the inflammation of the membrane of the rib cage, pleurisy. She was in critical condition for a few days and hovered between life and death. The doctor told my aunt that she would die soon. And then my aunt told me that my mother was delirious and called the name of five as her children while she lay in bed. Tadayoshi, Aiko, Reiko, Hisashi, and Kazuhiko. Few days later, miraculously, she got well and recovered. After that, she was fine. My mother always worked fast as if she were trying to forget the A-bomb and her missing husband and daughter. My mother worked hard and raised her 5 children all herself in my city, where everything was burned to ground by the bomb. I don't know she did it. She had never complained about anything, and she was always cheerful. This is the Avon Health Book. People who hold the Avon Health Book are able to receive all medical treatment, including medical examination for radiation effects, for free. But my mother never applied for Avon Health Book for us because she didn't want us to be discriminated against or prejudiced against as an Avon affect being. She didn't want us to be labeled as a hibakusha. She passed away peacefully in 2000 at the age of 87. Only 4 years ago, my sister found an old small blouse wrapped in the sheet white paper in the back of the chest drawers. The chest drawers memento of my mother. It was a spare school blouse belonging to my eldest sister. I was surprised when I saw it. My sister must have been wearing an identical blouse when the bomb was dropped. It was the only thing left that belonged to my sister. My mother must have been looked after it carefully because she didn't have my sister's ashes. When I saw it, I was so shocked. I felt pain and regret. Why did my mother keep this uniform? What did she think about it? Why didn't she say anything about it? Now I understand why my mother didn't tell me anything about the A-bomb, my father and sister. It was because the depth of her sadness was too deep, so she couldn't talk about it. This small hidden blouse of my sister's tells me how great my mother's suffering was. Now, this tiny uniform shows everything about the atomic bombing that caused unspeakable human suffering. I hope you would remember that there are many ashes of A-bomb victims around here and this ground. We mustn't let the cruelism of the war and A-bomb fade with the passage of time. I donated this brush to Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.